Gears. They're one of the most forgotten features in Brawl Stars, yet they're just so important for you to have in your kit. Like, just imagine most of the tanks without a health gear nowadays. That is a massive disadvantage. Or not having the speed gear in an extremely bushy map. Nearly impossible. So, why isn't Supercell adding any new gears and why aren't they changing anything about them? And my theory is a possible rework. So today I'm here to show you what I would like to see as Gears 3.0. Hope you enjoy. So let's start off with the basics. The gear slots. The gear slots, even though they're reasonable as they are, unfortunately they do not allow for certain gears to really shine. The system of just having 2 gears per brawler, it is more restrictive than you can possibly imagine, and you can do something way much easier and way much more flexible for the brawlers. So what I would do would be that now at level 8 and level 10 you would unlock 3 gear spaces for your brawler, and each gear would occupy a certain amount of spaces. So in some cases, depending on your gear selection, you could have 2 gears or even 3 gears if you chose gears that would occupy less slot spaces. On top of that, the slot spaces would allow Supercell to have a bonus way to nerf or buff gears. If gear it is too strong and there is no real way to nerf it, then in that case just make it cost 1 additional space and the gear would become way much more balanced. With this being said, this would also help the economy of the game because each gear space would only cost 500 coins. And even though yes, you technically end up wasting, or may I say investing 3,000 coins to your gears, once you use all of those 3,000 coins, you would literally have all gears for the brawler. Because you will start with all of the gears as an option, what you would buy would be the place to place that gear. So, for all brawlers, it would always cost 3,000 coins. This also technically means that mythic gears and epic gears will no longer have increased cost because you're not paying for the gear, you're just paying for the place to put the gear. This change would hopefully bring a little bit more strategy into picking the gears and also a little bit easier to the economy because now you won't really need to waste most of the times as much coins for the brawlers because now all you really need is 3,000 coins and you already have all gears for the brawler. And this also even helps the game to balance the gears, so all I see is positive points on this change. But with this rework, obviously there needs to be a new space cost for each gears. So with the baselines of the gears being done, now I will talk about the rework to all of the gears. Rework or just changes in general to the new system. So damage gear would stay exactly the same, but now it would cost 3 spaces. The health gear would cost 2 spaces. The speed gear would also cost 2 spaces. The vision gear would reveal enemies for 2 seconds and would only cost 1 space. And now you will have a warning similar to Tara's first gadget to know if you're being watched by the vision gear. The shield gear will now only give 700 bonus shield and it will only cost 2 spaces. On top of that, lifesteal attacks like Kenji or Edgar now take into consideration the amount of HP that the shield gear has. So, quick explanation, if you don't know, Edgar, when he hits someone with the shield gear, he actually barely lifesteals anything because the lifesteal does not consider the shield has actual HP. So before you couldn't lifesteal, but now you'll be able to do that. And finally, the gadget cooldown gear will still reduce the gadget cooldown by 15% and it will occupy 3 spaces. So then we will have the epic gears and then the mythic gears. So I will also add the mythic gear to a couple new brawlers that I personally think deserve such mythic gear. So let's start off with the pet gear, which would have a small rework. The bonus damage of the pets would actually be decreased from 25% to 15%, but now it would only take 1 space, so it would be technically the cheapest gear of them all, just to make the gear not too toxic. And now the gear would be added to Ash, Eve, Juju, Larry and Lori, and Lola. Then we have the super gear. The super would now, instead of being increased by 10%, it would be increased by 15%. So increasing the amount of bonus charge rate, but to kind of compensate for it, it would take 3 spaces. So if you really want the bonus super, you would have to sacrifice a good chunk of the gear spaces. On top of these, a lot of new brawlers would now have the super charge gear, especially brawlers that have secondary ways of charging their super. So Max would have the gear, so would Buster, Maisie, assuming it would take less one-shot get her super, which people who know Maisie back in the days only took 3 shots, so if you wanted to get that times back, you would have to sacrifice 3 gear spaces in order to do that. Daryl would also have the gear, Chester, which would need as well 1 less hit from his basics, Lily, Buzz, Draco, Ollie, Kit, Jaeyoung, Shade, and finally Things. On top of these, a couple of brawlers would actually lose the supercharge gear, such as Otis, Nani, and Ash. Brawlers that I never understood why they even had the gear in the first place. The next epic gear, it is the reload gear, which would stay has a 15% faster reload speed, and it would take 3 spaces. So the only new brawler that would have this gear would be Miko, so if you want to be able to attack faster and to have just more ammo in general, you would have to sacrifice those 3 gear spaces, and this gear would be removed from Lola, because I never understood why she actually got this gear, if I'm being honest. And now finally we have the mythic gears. So quadruplet, which is Eve's mythic gear, would cost 3 spaces and it would still just spawn 1 extra baby. Batstorm, the Morty's mythic gear, would still travel 50% faster, but it would take 3 spaces, so think twice before just randomly equipping this mythic gear. Sticky Oil from Ember would actually get its slow increased from 10% to 15%, but it would take 3 spaces. Tick's Thick Head, super HP increased by 1000, would only take 2 spaces. Crow's Enduring Toxin would take as well 3 spaces, would stay the same. Exhausting Storm, enemies inside Sandy Super will now deal 15% less damage instead of the old 20%, and this gear would only take 2 spaces. Lingering Smoke, which is Leon's mythic gear, would take 2 spaces. Talk to the Hand, which is Jean's mythic gear, which would still give 1 extra tile of range, would cost 3 spaces. And finally, Super Turret, which is Pam's mythic gear, the turret heal gets increased by 15%, this would only take 1 space. And the heal got nerfed from plus 20% to plus 15%. So, with all of the gears that currently exist in the game getting fixed, we still need to talk about new gears, because one of the supposed wonders of the gears would be just how much you could personalize your brawler depending on the situation and your playstyle. So, to do that, we will need new gears. So now, let me introduce you to the new gears of Brawl Stars. Starting off, we have super rare gears, and the first of them all, it is a cocky gear. When your HP is above 80%, you will deal 15% bonus damage, and this gear would cost 2 spaces. So essentially, most of the snipers in the game, if you can make sure that you stay at high HP, will have a lot of bonus damage. This will also be really good with the shield gear as well. The only brawler that I could see getting way too much benefit from this, it is probably Pearl, since she already deals so much damage. And brawlers under the effect of this gear will get a similar effect to Frank's first star power when activated. Next we have the Hypercharge gear. It will work very similar to the normal supercharge gear. Your hypercharge charges 15% faster, and this would cost you 3 spaces. So if your brawler has a strong hypercharge, and hopefully one that you can easily get, these super rare gear, it is for you. The only reason why I actually think that this would not be an epic gear is that because there is not, in my eyes, a single brawler that would take way too much benefit from this gear. Obviously, brawlers with long charge rates would have more benefits, but still nothing too crazy, so I think every brawler should have the right to get their hyper charge a little bit faster if they really want to. The next gear, it is the last resource gear. When you have less than 1 ammo, you get a 15% shield. And attention, I said less than 1 ammo, so do not worry, Charlie, B, Bonnie won't get too much value out of this. This is a sort of situational gear. For example, if you're an assassin and you really rush very hard onto an enemy, like an Edgar for example, you will get the 15% shield, and that will be very helpful, at least until you get your ammo back, which then you would lose the shield. So this gear is meant to help the game to have more aggressive playstyles. The next gear we have, it is the tactical team gear. For each friendly troop on the field, you get a 3.5% reload speed buff. And the major difference between this and the regular reload gear, is that this includes pets. So what you really want to do with this, it is to probably combine this with the Mr. P or a Eve, and this could make the draft a little bit better for them. This is technically an indirect buff to literally every spawnable in the game, but at the same time, all of the spawnables are weak, so I actually think this is not the worst idea in the world. The only brawler that could really abuse the hell out of this is Eve technically, but that is mostly with the hypercharge, and her super it is relatively easy to counter, so no big worries here if I'm being honest. And this gear, just to be clear, would cost 3 spaces, so you would have to be cautious while equipping this gear. Now we'll have the epic gears, and starting off we have a gear that most of you might recognize, which is the resistance gear. Stuns, silences, taunts last 35% less time, and slows are 35% less effective on you. And this gear, while it's working, you would just have a simple golden glowing effect. This gear would take 2 spaces, and the following brawlers would have this gear: Bull, El Primo, Rosa, 8-Bit, Daryl, Jackie, Stu, Pam, Frank, Bibi, Edgar, Ash, Sam, Hank, Fang, Ollie, Meg, and Draco. And even though it does break a couple interactions with stuns, this gear would just be good for nearly every single tank. Tanks would now just be more resistant to ground control abilities. And this is just one thing that I never understood why they removed it from the game. The gear is not too strong as well, therefore it's relatively cheap cost. And I don't really think that this gear would cause many troubles, but in draft, for example, if you're facing a Lou, or a Ollie, or a B as well, this resistance gear would be very helpful for you. The next gear, it is the headshot gear. If the shot connects at the last 0.66 tiles of your range, the attack deals an extra 15% damage. This gear would cost 3 spaces, so it is quite expensive. If you want to take the risk and really is in an insanely open map, then go for it. The following brawlers would have this gear: Brock, Gus, Piper, Bee, Bonnie, Belle, Mandy, Maisie, Angelo, and RT. So this is also just a sniper gear, and you would only really get value from this at the maximum range. So the one only thing that I do have to mention is RT as well. RT would not have this effect on his Jackie form, because otherwise that could be a little bit too strong, just to make that extra clear. Then we have the opposite, which would be the point blank gear. If the shot connects at the first 0.66 tiles, your attack deals an extra 15% damage. So, the following brawlers would have this gear: Shelly, Bull, Daryl, Bibi, Edgar, Ash, Shade, Tara, Fang, Buster, Charlie, Lily, Surge, and Chester. And just to be clear, If you have a piercing attack, the bonus damage does not stack, and it's only applied to the brawlers that are indeed 0.66 tiles of distance off you. Just to make that clear. And this is just a good gear to have if you're playing really aggressive brawlers and if you're in a very bushy map, for example. A brawler like Edgar dealing just 15% more damage just because he's really close to you would be really good. It would make Chester even stronger, for example. But it takes 3 spaces. So just like with the headshot gear, you need to be careful because if you equip this gear and don't get value out of it, you're just wasting 3 gear spaces, which is really bad, honestly. And finally, to end today's video, we will have 1 or 2 new mythic gears for all brawlers currently in the game. I won't take much time to explain the gears because otherwise I would stay here for ages. So starting off we have Shelly with Fire Blast. Super also deals 1200 damage over 3 seconds, has burning damage, and it will cost 2 spaces. Then we also have Quick Reaction. Whenever you receive damage you get a 15% speed buff for 0.5 seconds and instantly reload 0.15 ammo. The effect does not stack and it will take 3 spaces. For Nita we have Avenge. When Bruce dies, Nita gets a 15% speed boost and damage boost for 5 seconds. This costs 3 spaces. Then we also have Bond. While Bruce is inside Nita's range, both get a 15% speed boost. These would also cost 3 spaces. Next we have Colt and we have Reload and Shoot. For each super projectile that hits on an enemy, you get 0.1 ammo. This would cost 3 spaces. The second mythic gear would be the whole pack. Your super shoots 6 extra projectiles and it will cost 2 spaces. Then we have Bull with Fearless. Super is 20% faster, would cost 2 spaces, and Stay There. Your super also applies silence to the enemies for 1 second. This would cost 3 spaces. For Brock we have Radioactive. The basic attack Fire Puddle now has the same radius as the explosion. This would cost only 1 space, and then the second mythic gear would be Fire. Super also leaves fire puddles, just like the basic attack, and this would cost 2 spaces. Next we have El Primo and we have the mythic gear Oppressive. Super also silences enemies for 1 second. This would cost 3 spaces. Then we have Natural. For each enemy hit by your super, you heal 1k HP, which would also cost 3 spaces. For Barley we have Corrosive. Your super lasts an additional 2 seconds on the floor, which would take 3 spaces, and Beverage Enjoyer. Sending in any of your puddles will slowly charge your super 3.3%, which meant that it would take 30 seconds to get your super. This mythic gear would cost 4 spaces. For Poco we have Attentive. Super heals an extra 19.05% to allies below 15% HP, this would cost 2 spaces, and Clean. Super gives debuff immunity to himself and allies for 0.5 seconds, this would only cost 1 space. Then for Rosa we have Thick Shield. Super gives you Crown Control immunity, so immunity to slow, stuns and knockbacks, which would cost 3 spaces, and Beloved Grass. You naturally regen 100% more when in bushes, which would cost 2 spaces. Next we have Jessie and we will have Multi-Shot, where the turret can shoot 2 different targets at once, though the targets cannot stack, this would cost 4 spaces, and Energy Preservation. Basic attack damage decay per bounce, it's now removed, so all of the bounces of your attack would deal the same damage, and these would cost 3 spaces. Next we have Dynamite with Black Powder, where your super would also silence enemies for 1 second, this would cost 2 spaces, and Radioactive Bomb. The super would also leave a big burning area for 3 seconds, which would deal 720 damage per second. This would have the same area as the Penny Cannonball fire radius, and it would cost 2 spaces. Next we have Tick, and Tick already has his Thick Head mythic gear, which would stay the same, and then we would also have the new mythic gear Cannon Head. The super throw range would be increased by 200%. So instead of only being able to throw 3.33 tiles away, you would now be able to throw your head up to 10 tiles away. And this would cost 3 spaces. Next we have 8-bit, and first we would have extended signal. The super effect duration it's increased by 1 second, which would cost 1 space. And reloaded boost. When your super is deployed, it instantly reloads 3 ammo to all brawlers inside its effect, and this includes both star powers. These would cost 2 spaces. Next we have Rico with Ballomania. Rico basic attack bounce range gets increased by 20%, so each bounce, instead of increasing 1.67 tiles of range, it will now increase 2 tiles, and this would cost 4 spaces. Then we would also have bounce and reload, so for each bounce that the super projectiles make, Rico would instantly reload 0.1 ammo, and this would cost 2 spaces. Next have Daryl, and the first mythic gear, a real pirate, would steal 33% of the enemy ammo, which would cost 2 spaces. The second mythic gear would be always rolling, and after using each super, you get a 50% charge rate buff for 3 seconds. These would cost 3 spaces. Next we have Penny with Persistent Flame. The burning area lasts 1 extra second, which would cost 1 space. And Revenge. When the mortar dies, it shoots 1 bomb to all enemies within its range, which would cost 2 spaces. Next we have Carl with Dusty Spin, where the super would also slow enemies hit by it for 1 second, which would cost 4 spaces, and Striking Gold. Each connection from your basic attack would reduce gadget cooldown by half a second, which would also cost 4 spaces. Next for Jackie we have Epicenter Action. Enemies that get hit by the center of your super receive 2480 damage and get slowed for 1.5 seconds. This would cost 3 spaces. And then we also have Big Pull, where the super range would be increased by 1 whole tile, which would also cost 3 spaces. Next for Gus we have Full of Ghosts. It requires less 1 hit to fill the ghost bar, which would cost 2 spaces, and Clean Ghost. Collecting the ghost also removes all negative effects on yourself, which would cost 1 space. Then we have Bow and Mastery of the Bow. Each connected shot reduces the cooldown of your gadgets by 1/4 of a second. These would cost 4 spaces. And Hunt. Bow deals burning damage, 640 damage over 4 seconds, to enemies below 50% of their HP. These would cost 2 spaces. Then we have Ams with Real Acid. Each tick of your basic attack removes 0.15 ammo from the enemy. These would cost 3 spaces. Then we also have Destructive Aura. Your super silences enemies for half a second, which would cost 4 spaces. For Stu we have Loaded. You can stack up to 2 supers. This is not like Melody, you have to charge both supers individually. So 1 full ammo would give you 2 supers, and this would cost 4 spaces. Then we also have Burst. Your super, when used, it executes a small explosion behind you that deals 400 damage and that lights the enemies on fire. These would cost 2 spaces. Next we have Piper with Extra Surprise. Your super spawns 1 extra bomb in the middle, and this one is the last to explode. This costs 2 spaces. Then we have Fresh Jump, and immediately after jumping you hypnotize enemies in a 3 tile radius for 1 second, which would cost 3 spaces. Then we have Pam with Healthy Heal. Your super also gives to you and your allies debuff immunity. This would cost 4 spaces. Then we have Scrap Generator. While inside your super, Pam, and only Pam, gets a 50% faster reload time. This would cost 2 spaces. Then we have Frank with Stretching Limits. Your passive of unloading faster now goes up to 17% unload speed buff, which costs 3 spaces. Then you also have Attractive Beat. Your super now hypnotizes enemies instead of stunning them, and this would cost 2 spaces. Next have BB with Terrific Hit. Enemies hit by the home run, if they connect against a wall, they receive an extra 1400 damage and get stunned for half a second. This would cost 3 spaces. Then we have Bath Barrage. If your attack connects to an enemy for the next 1 second, your next attack will have half the unload time. So this means that if you connect multiple attacks one after the other, they'll all have half the unload time. This ability would cost 4 spaces. Have Angry Bees. Connecting a charged shot instantly reloads 0.4 ammo. This would cost 2 spaces. And Sticky Honey. Super slow, lasts for an additional 1 second, which would also cost 2 spaces. Next with Natty, we have Triple Connection Reaction. Enemies hit by the 3 orbs receive an extra 15% damage, so the triple shot would deal 5100 damage, and this would cost 4 spaces. Then we also have Burning People, and people would now leave a fire trail just like Stew. This would cost 3 spaces. Next we have Edgar with Unseen Wheel. After jumping, Edgar is immune to crowd control for 1.5 seconds. This would cost 3 spaces. Then we also have Defensive Posture. While you have your super, you get a 15% shield. This would only cost 1 space. Then we have Griff with extra taxes. Griff super increases the enemy gadget cooldown by 1 second per note. This would cost 3 spaces. And Backup Business. Whenever Griff receives damage, he instantly reloads 0.2 ammo. This would cost 4 spaces. Then we have Grom with Demonstration of Power. The super split range is increased by 2.66 tiles. This would cost 2 spaces. And Trespassing. Your super now pierces through walls, and this would cost 2 spaces as well. Then we have Bonnie with Home Sweet Cannon. Whenever you go back into Clyde, you heal all of your HP back up. This would cost 3 spaces. And we then also have Hard Helmet. When you transform into human form, you have a 15% shield. This would also cost 3 spaces. Then we have Gale with Overwhelming Storm. Your super also destroys projectiles. This would cost 4 spaces. And then we have Blast. Your super removes 1 ammo from enemies hit by it, which would cost 1 space. Next we have Colette and Right for the Heart. Your super deals 25% of the target maximum HP instead of 20%. This would not change the damage to non-brawlers, and this would cost 2 spaces. Then we have Obsession. Your super would also slow enemies down by 30% for 1 second. This would also cost 2 spaces. Then we have Belle with Electric Target. Your super also stuns the enemy for 1 second. This would cost 2 spaces. And then we have Reward. An enemy with the target, when he gets killed, Belle gets a 15% shield and instantly reloads 1 ammo. This would also cost 2 spaces. Then we have Ash with Rage Barrage. Your unload speed gets buffed depending on your amount of rage, going up to a 60% buff. This would cost 4 spaces. Then we also have Rage Shield, and depending on the amount of rage you have, you could get a shield up to 15%. This would cost 3 spaces. For Lola, we have Thick Ego. Ego has an extra 2k HP, which would cost 3 spaces, and Ego Team Up. The Ego has an area around him, with the same radius as Lola's area, which would give to allies a 15% reload speed buff. This would only cost 1 space. Then for Sam we have Shock Gauntlets. The super slows enemies for 1 second, which would cost 3 spaces, and in Haste Retrieve. Gauntlet Retrieve's speed is tripled, which would only cost 1 space. Then we have Maisie with Sucking Ray. While unloading, the super Manding rapidly pulls people in a 5-tile radius towards her. This would cost 3 spaces. And Sour Candy. Super leaves a slow area for 4 seconds, which would cost 3 spaces as well. Then we have Maisie with Epicenter. If the enemy gets hit by your super within 2.33 tiles of range, instead of getting knocked back, they get stunned for 1 second. This would cost 3 spaces. Then we also have Smoke Blast. Super removes 34% of the enemy ammo. This would cost 1 space. Next we have Hank with Strong Torpedo. Each torpedo from the super deals half a second stun. This would cost 3 spaces. And Healing Fish. The heal from the super is 20% stronger, which would also cost 3 spaces. Then I have Pearl with Supreme Heat Blast. Super knockback gets increased to the same as a Jean first gadget, and the maximum damage gets increased from 5422 to 6200 damage. This would cost 3 spaces. And then we have Natural Heat, where the heat bar charges 2 seconds faster, and this would also cost 3 spaces. Then we have Twin Revenge. If either one of the twins die, the other one gets a 50% faster reload speed and a 15% speed buff for 5 seconds. This would cost 3 spaces. And then we have Control. Enemies within Lori range reload 75% slower for 1 second. This would cost 2 spaces. For Angela we have Strong Swamp, the super lasts 2 extra seconds, this would cost 2 spaces, and Rapid Fire. While inside the super, Angela charges his shots 15% faster, this would also cost 2 spaces. Next we have Barry with Icy Cream. Your puddles now slow enemies by 15% for 1 second, this costs 3 spaces, and Ice Cream Party. Whenever you use the super, you also auto-away one attack at everything. This also costs 3 spaces. For Shade we have Scary Slap. The crit also slows enemies down for 1 second, this would cost 3 spaces, and a Real Ghost. Super lasts 2 extra seconds, which would cost 2 spaces. Then for Meeple we have Natural 22, Super also allows allies to pass through walls, this would cost 3 spaces, and Toxic. Enemies inside your Super reload 75% slower, this would cost 2 spaces. Now starting with the Mythics we have Morty's with Disease. Your Super also applies a heal reduction of 75% for 3 seconds to the enemies, this would cost 1 space, and Bat Shovel. The Long Dash also has a lifesteal of 35% and this would cost 2 spaces. Next we have Tor with Leftover Shadow. Enemies defeated by you spawn 1 little shadow tower, like your second gadget, this would cost 2 spaces, and Sticky Black Hole. The pulling effect of the black hole also slows enemies down for 2 seconds, and this would also cost 2 spaces. Next we have Jean with Make a Wish, where your super is slightly guided, similar to Piper's second gadget, and he already has a mythic gear, so no need to add a new one. For Max we have Energy Blast. Your super duration lasts 1 extra second, and I mean the actual super, not the bonus speed that the super gives. It's an important difference. This would cost 3 spaces. And then we have Energy Overlap, that if you have full ammo, you are 15% faster, and this would also cost 3 spaces. For Mr. P, we have Last Stand. When the base dies, it spawns 1 porter, no matter how many porters are on the field. This would cost 2 spaces. And Oiled Porters. Porters now spawn 1 second faster, and this would also cost 2 spaces. For Sprout, we have Mighty Nature. Your super is unbreakable, and this would cost 2 spaces. Then we also have Natural Bounce. The bounce range is increased by 20%. This would cost 3 spaces. Next we have Byron and his Pure Cure. Super instantly gives 1 ammo to allies and removes 1 ammo to enemies, this would cost 3 spaces, and Overwhelming Toxin. Enemies poisoned by you deal 15% less damage, this would also cost 3 spaces. For Squeak we have Mass Bomb. Your super spawns 2 extra bombs, this would cost 1 space, and Gummy. Enemies with bombs stick to them are 30% slower, this would cost 3 spaces. For Lou we have Frostburn. Frozen enemies instantly receive 1000 damage and lose 1 of their ammo, this would cost 3 spaces, and Winter Supremacy. Your super grows in size throughout its duration up to a 20% buff, this would cost 4 spaces. For Ruffs we have Supply System. You can have unlimited supplies on the field, this would cost 2 spaces, and War Adrenaline. Picking the supply also temporarily increases your speed by 15% for 10 seconds, this would cost 3 spaces. For Buzz we have Long Throw, where your super range is increased by 30%, this would cost 2 spaces, and An Eye on You. Enemies inside Buzz's circle reload 75% slower, and this would cost 4 spaces. For Fang we have Kick Precision. Your first hit from your super also stuns the enemy for half a second, this would cost 2 spaces, and Kick Barrage. Your super has infinite bounces, plus the bounce range is increased to the equivalent of his Wasabi power, this would cost 3 spaces. For Eve, we have Inevitable. Kids always spawn whenever the egg gets destroyed, so even if a brawler tries to destroy the egg, the kids will just spawn no matter what. This would cost 4 spaces, and Eve already has one good mythic gear as well. For Janet, we have Better Gas Tank, the super lasts 2 extra seconds, these would cost 2 spaces, and Burning Rockets. Each bomb from the super leaves a small fire puddle like Brock's main attack. These would cost 1 space. For OTs we have Bouncy Star, the super can bounce on walls just like a Rico attack, this would cost 2 spaces, and Paint Combo. Enemies hit by a full ammo get silenced for 1 second, this would cost 4 spaces. Then for Booster we have Back Off, enemies who collide against your super get pushed back and receive 1600 damage, this would cost 4 spaces, and then we have Extra Battery where the super lasts an extra 2 seconds which would cost 4 spaces as well. Next we have Grey with Strong Connection, the portal delay between teleports gets reduced by 33%, this would cost 1 space, and then we also have Portal Curse, enemies who step on the portals are silenced by half a second, this would cost 3 spaces. Next we have RT with Nervous, marked enemies can't use their gadgets, this would cost 2 spaces, and Split Reaction. When you're split, whenever you attack you also send one signal directly to the lower part, which would slow enemies for 1 second, mark them and deal 1400 damage. This would also cost 2 spaces. Then for Willow we have Deep Control, the super lasts an extra 2 seconds which would cost 2 spaces, and Plot Control. Whatever super the controlled enemy would have charged, you will get that amount of super towards you. So if you mind control us too, you'll most likely get your super back. This ability would cost 3 spaces. Then for Doug we have Protective Bun, after reviving get a 50% damage reduction shield for 1 second, this would cost 2 spaces, and Sweet Splash. Doug's heal is increased by 50% and this would cost 3 spaces. Then for Chuck we have Heavy Train, your super now knocks enemies back, which would cost 2 spaces, and Electric Static. Between each post there would be one thin line of electricity, where enemies that pass through it would get slowed down by 15% for 1 second, and this would cost 2 spaces. For Charlie we have Thick Cocoon, the super lasts an extra 2 seconds which would cost 3 spaces, and Yo-Yo Barrage. Each yo-yo attack connected makes the next unload time 25% smaller, allowing you to deal a lot more damage to enemies up close. There is a minimum unload time of 0.25 seconds and this ability would cost 3 spaces. Next we have Miko with Strong Land, the radius of the area damage of the basic attack gets increased by 33%, this would cost 3 spaces, and Precision Landing. This weird slowing down at the end of the super gets removed, this would cost 1 space. Next we have Melody with Complex Beat, you can now have up to 4 notes, this would cost 3 spaces, and Vibing. Each floating note hit removes 10% of the enemy ammo, this would cost 2 spaces. Then for Lily we have Poisonous Glowing Berry, your super silences enemies for 1 second, this would cost 4 spaces, and Fresh Throw. Your super has 3 extra tiles of range, which would cost 2 spaces. For Clancy we have Veteran Discount, each stage requires less 1 token to achieve, which would cost 2 spaces, and Oppressive Tactics. Your super also silences enemies for half a second, this would also cost 2 spaces. Then for Mo we have Resilient Drill, where the super lasts 2 extra seconds, this would cost 1 space, and Skilled Throw. Each rock split spikes would curve, just like Spike's second store power. This would cost 2 spaces. For Juju we have Mighty Grease. Grease has 2 extra K HP, this would cost 3 spaces, and Elemental Grease. Depending on the element where you spawn Grease, it gains special attributes. On Earth he receives 15% less damage, on grass he is 15% faster, and on water he recharges your super 30% more. All of these would cost 2 spaces. For Ollie we have Musical Dash, your super dash also hypnotizes enemies for 1 second, this would cost 3 spaces, and Musical Therapy. The super no longer removes your own ammo, this would cost 4 spaces. For Loom we have Bang, super roots enemies for an extra 1 second, this would cost 2 spaces, and back to back. Morning Stars retrieve 10% faster and an extra 50% faster for each enemy hit. This would cost 3 spaces. For things we have Time Management, allies inside your super reload 25% faster and enemies inside it reload 75% slower, this would cost 4 spaces. Then we also have Big Bang, super has a 33% larger radius and this would cost 3 spaces. For Jeong we have Life Changer, your super auto charges 50% faster, this would cost 3 spaces, and Mixed Up, your super always deploys both the speed boost and the heal, this would cost 4 spaces. Starting with the legendaries, we now have Spike with Spike Generator. For each brawler inside your super, you reload 10% faster, this includes yourself and allies, and this would cost 3 spaces. Plus, we have Cactus Curse, enemies defeated by you spawn a Cactus Pacatus, this would also cost 3 spaces. For Crow we have Severe Poison, poison enemies reload 30% slower, this would cost 2 spaces, and Poison Barrage, the poison can now stack, this would cost 4 spaces. For Leon we have Sneak Attack, when you use your super, your next attack deals 15% more damage, this would cost 1 space, and Leon already has a second mythic gear that works pretty well. For Sandy we have Descent Advantage, enemies inside Sandy's super cannot see the outside of the super, similar to Kaze's super. This would cost 3 spaces and Sandy already also has a second mythic gear that works pretty well. For Amber we have Toasted Reloads, burning enemies reload 75% slower. This would cost 1 space and Amber already has another pretty good mythic gear that works pretty well as well. Next have Meg with Protocol Energy Blast. Whenever the mecha drops to 50%, an explosion pushes enemies really far away, dealing 2400 damage, slowing them down for 1 second. You only get one of these per mecha and it would cost 4 spaces. Then we have Protocol Protect. Whenever the mecha gets destroyed, it spawns 3 metal pieces in a triangular shape with 1500 HP, similar to Ruff's first gadget. This would cost 2 spaces. Then we have Surge with Action Armor. Whenever you use your super, you get a 1000 shield HP for 10 seconds. This would cost 2 spaces. Then we have Strong Jump, where the jump range gets increased by 50%, which would also cost 3 spaces. For Chester we have Signs. Holding a super will grant you a 15% reload speed buff, this would cost 1 space. And then we have Bellow Supremacy. You have the 4th row twice, this would cost 3 spaces. For Cordelius we have Deep Darkness, enemies inside the Shadow Realm reload 75% slower, this would cost 2 spaces, and Darkness Ego, a shadow of you which would behave like an ego, within 1 tile to your right would imitate all of your attacks and movement, this would cost 2 spaces. Then we have Helpful Buddy. While Kit is attached to an ally, that ally is immune to negative effects. This would cost 4 spaces. Then we have Harmful Kitty. When supering into an enemy, that enemy receives a bell target type of effect. That would only last for the duration of Kit's super. This would cost 2 spaces. For Draco we have Fire Blast. The dragon for maximum ammo gets increased by 25%, so instead of 40 ammo you would have 50, this would cost 3 spaces, and let the party start. Whenever Draco uses his super, he slows enemies within range for 1 second, this would cost 2 spaces. Next have Kenji with Dashing Danger. Your dash also poisons enemies, dealing 600 damage over 4 seconds and reducing their heal by 40%. These would cost 3 spaces. Then we have Fishy Slice, where the super slows enemies for 2 seconds. These would also cost 3 spaces. Next for Kaze we have Secret Techniques. Allies inside Geisha's super are now invisible, plus marked enemies receive 35% bonus damage. These would cost 4 spaces. Then we have Personality Trick. Whenever you swap between forms, you get an invulnerability shield for half a second. This would cost 3 spaces. It's finally done. And there you have it. My personal take on what Gears 3.0 should be. Gears right now are honestly very boring, and it could be so much more if they just try to add more gears. The gadget gear, in my opinion, was a success, so I cannot really guess why they wouldn't add more gears unless they genuinely wanted to rework them. Like, potentially make them cost power points, maybe. I could see that happening. But until we have clear idea of what that rework could be, all I can say is I'm guessing this. And these would be what I would like to see for gears. With this being said, hope you enjoyed today's video because it took a really long time to make it. If you like, do not forget to subscribe, join our Discord server, link in the description, and I'll see ya on the next video.